Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Unexpected Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we are here to talk all about personal branding, which is a topic we are so excited about because I feel like it's been being talked about like nonstop, even on my TikTok For You page lately. And we actually have a special guest with us today, Maddie. So we would love if you would take a second to introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Maddie Peschong. I am a brand photographer and coach based in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, so right in the heart of the Midwest. I have been a photographer for about 10 years and specifically a brand photographer for about five. And in the past few years, I have been coaching brand photographers as well, or photographers who want to pivot into branding photography. Before I found brand photography, I was a little bit aimless. I really loved photography, but didn't feel like I really fit in any particular niche. And then when I found personal branding, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I've been looking for. I have a podcast myself called Take It Personally, and the two of you were so gracious to be guests on that, where we talked all about all things SEO. And then I have a studio space, which is a separate business, and we rent out the space to other photographers in the area. So I've got my hands in a lot of things, and I love my job.
Amazing. Well, we are going to hop right in. And first thing we want to talk about is personal brands in general. Why are they so powerful? KB mentioned that it's coming up a lot. A lot of people are talking about personal brands. What is it? Why should we be looking into them? When is it right? Like what is the whole deal with personal brands?
Yeah, I think the big thing is that people connect with people. We are not meant to connect with like big faceless corporations. Like we are meant to connect with people and connect on a human level. And solopreneurs really have such an advantage over a lot of these big corporate entities. I think solopreneurs, we love to kind of complain about how we wear all the hats in our business. And I get it. I don't want to do my bookkeeping. I don't want to do plenty of things that I need to do because I'm a solopreneur. However, as a solopreneur, you are already a personal brand. You don't have to do anything extra or special to like make a personal brand or have a personal brand. You're a person, you have a personal brand. And we see these like big corporations spending literal billions of dollars. I think last year it was like 33.3 billion or some crazy number. They're investing that much money into things like influencer marketing and personal branding and collaborating with celebrities, just trying to give a human face to their brand. And as a solopreneur, you can do that just by waking up in the morning. You don't have to do anything extra. So it really is like such a leg up in the industry.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And the sometimes it's hard to like think about yourself as like having a personal brand. KP and I have even been talking about it a lot lately about like starting or kind of pushing more personal brands. But like when you are yourself, you are your business, even photographers, it's in the name. Like most of the time, your photography business will be your name photography. So it really is a personal brand. And it's sometimes a little scary to lean into it, but the reality is you're already there.
Yeah. And I think that that's a really good point. Like it feels scary and it feels vulnerable because it is all those things. So we don't need to pretend that it's not a vulnerable situation. It is. There are times when I'm like, this is terrifying. Why did I do this? But that's exactly right. What you said, like you already are. So nothing that you could do or not do is going to make you not have a personal brand because you're a person and you have a business. And quite frankly, even if you worked at some like corporate entity, you would still have a personal brand. A personal brand is essentially your reputation. You're going to have that no matter what.
That's so true. What would you say are some of the most common mistakes that people make when it comes to personal branding?
Oh, I love this question. I think that the biggest mistake that people make when it comes to personal branding is actually something that in the beginning of building your personal brand could benefit you. And that's why so many people make the mistake. And that is striving for relatability. I think there's
Mm.
a lot of confusion between people who want to build a relatable personal brand versus an authentic personal brand. And we're getting the two terms confused. The issue with trying to be relatable is that you're like chasing your tail. Like you're never going to be relatable to everyone. And if you're trying so desperately to be relatable to all these people, like you're not being authentic to yourself. So as opposed to constantly trying to be relatable, instead feeling really confident in your authenticity, And that's going to be different for everyone. I always joke that like my MO is to go to Costco without makeup, with my hair slicked back, wearing my gym clothes. And like that's part of my personal brand. And then you've got my mother who doesn't even go to the mailbox without mascara and earrings. We have very different personal brands, and neither of them are bad. They're just different. So you want to experiment essentially and give yourself permission to kind of figure out what authenticity means to you, but always striving for authenticity and what do you want, what feels right to you, as opposed to constantly trying to be relatable.
And I think that's one of the big benefits of running your own business. It's like you get to choose, because if you work for a corporation, you kind of just have to like fall in line with what their values are, with what they want to push. But when you're working for yourself, it's all up to you. You choose, you make all the decisions. You can present yourself however you want to present yourself, and you really have so much flexibility that I feel like sometimes it can be a little overwhelming, because you're like, I don't know what to do. Like which way should I go? But it also gives you so much freedom.
Yeah, it's exciting, right? Like the rules are there are no rules. And
Hmm.
to your point, that's also a bit intimidating and like daunting in the beginning, because what do I want? You know, that's one
Hmm.
of the questions that I start all of my clients with is like, if you could wave a magic wand, what do you want out of your business and out of your brand? And most of them immediately respond with, I have no idea. And I think that's, speaking of relatability, I think that's really relatable, because we don't often really think about what do I want and how do I want to be perceived, but also what do I genuinely want if I wasn't considering anyone else? We're constantly kind of putting it through the lens of like, what will other people think? And so to
Hmm.
really think about what do I want in my personal brand is a pretty overwhelming question at first. And you have to get really comfortable with just like being uncomfortable and figuring it out as you go.
The whole journey of branding in general is such a introspective journey, and it's not something that is like quick and easy. I feel
Oh
like
my
that's
gosh.
like a big misconception. Like it's never going to happen overnight. Like there's even when like we do the actual like visual branding for people, like we ask 25 or so questions in a questionnaire and then have a whole call where we go more in depth. Like it is a big undertaking to create a brand that actually is, authentic to you and feels good to you. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't, you're never going to be able to represent it in the way that you want to.
Yeah. And that's such a recipe for burnout. You know, if you end
Mhm.
up kind of designing something that you maybe think feels authentic or you want it to feel authentic, but it actually isn't, like that's such a quick way to end up resenting what you've built, which is so common for entrepreneurs, like to get to a
Mhm.
point where they're like, I don't even like this business that I literally made for myself with my own rules, you know? So it's really daunting. And I think then you add on top of it that like then it changes, right? Because if personal brands are based on people and you as a person are a constant evolution, well, that
Mhm.
is annoying because then things are going to change.
Yeah, I feel like we're seeing that. And even in a lot of like our clients, we're seeing that evolution and the just need to be flexible and understand that like nothing is going to stay constant in your business over the years.
Yeah.
You're going to work with different clients. You're going to start offering new services. Things are going to change, and that's okay. But you
Yep.
also have to be like willing to adjust and change with them. Otherwise, you're going to get to the point where, we've even had clients be like, well, I don't, even when I show up for like shoots, I don't want to feel like I have to be a different person, because maybe my branding is all high luxury and I look really professional, but then I really just want to show up in like sweats and be, super casual and have fun and, make jokes. But now I feel like I have to be this super like tight knit person because that's what my, branding is. So it's a balance and something that is gonna change over time.
You make such a good point. And I think that this is a concern for people because, again, kind of speaking about relatability, like they want to have that perception of like, a lot of people that I talk to, they want to have the perception of like we can sit down over coffee, we can grab a beer together, like we're chill, like this is good, we can be friends, you know. But then they also maybe have this arm of their business that's really luxury or high end or high touch. And so there's like confusion as to, well, what is my personal brand then?
Mhm.
And the way that I like to look at it is your brand is your brand, right? But it also has different outfits. You're not going to show up at the gym in like this really glamorous jumpsuit with a full face of makeup and your hair all done, right? Like that wouldn't make sense. But it's not that going to the gym doesn't make sense. It's just that that outfit does not make sense for the gym. And so I like to think of personal branding in that way. Like your brand is your brand. Yes, it's going to evolve, but your brand is your brand. But there's going to be different situations that are where you not change, but kind of evolve to the situation that you're in. And that's okay too.
No, I totally agree. And I think that's a great kind of way of thinking about it and kind of making it more relatable to, everyday life and
Yeah.
how we see that. So if we're looking at personal branding and we're building that, how are we actually using that in stuff like marketing, our website? Like what are ways that we can use it? Why is it important? Where does it kind of play into all of those things?
Yeah, great question. So there are 4 pillars that I've identified of personal branding, and I think that that would be helpful in this conversation. And those 4 pillars are reputation, rapport, relationships, and refinement. So when you think of your reputation, this is really like the reputation that you have in your market, in your town. What are you known for? What do you want to be known for? So when I think of someone's reputation, some of that is like invisible, right? It's what people say when you're not in the room. It's the experiences that they've had with you. But it's also things like your website and your social media presence, maybe your brand photography as kind of a part of that. We have so much more control in 2024 over our reputation than we have had in the past. So yes, your personal brand like exists without you having to do anything, but we do have a lot of control because we control our websites and we control our social media platforms. So we can kind of drive that conversation a little bit. And then rapport, that's the connection that you're making with people. And I think a lot of that comes down to your messaging. So the content that you're creating, how you're speaking to your ideal client, how you're making that initial connection with them and kind of bringing them into your sphere, whatever that might be. Or even like, meeting someone at a networking event, that's building rapport. The third is relationships, and that's a deeper level of trust. So it's not just that initial like correspondence that you have with someone or that initial connection, but it's creating more trust. So I really think of your client experience, like once someone is in your business, the experience that they have with you as a business owner, what does that look like? Can they trust you? Do you do what you say you're going to do? And that's true in real life too, like not just in business. Do you do what you say you're going to do? And then the fourth being refined. So just letting it evolve and letting it change over time. So if your brand photos from a year ago don't reflect your brand right now, or your website or your social media profiles or whatever, giving yourself the permission to kind of look at those again objectively and say, okay, I think that this needs to change.
No, and I love that you mentioned brand photos because this is something that like we've been kind of working on more with our own business because I think for a while, KP had one where before I joined the studio, she had one, and then we had
I was
another
using
set
the
done
same
with
30 photos for a very long time
I
when it was me.
understand. I do.
and then we finally got one done with both of us, and we probably used those for almost a year, I think, and then we got new ones done, and it's kind of that like, okay, where do you want to be in your business? How do you want to be perceived? But is there, I guess, a time frame that would be good to kind of check in with yourself when it comes to brand photos on like, are these still working for me? Do I need to change them? Has my, personal brand changed a little bit, or how I represent myself changed? And does this like match that?
Totally. All the questions that you just asked are fantastic questions to check in with yourself on a regular basis, whatever that means for you. If it's annual, if it's every 6 months, if it's every 5 years, like make sure you're asking yourself those questions. I will say with my clients, what I often hear from them is that they have like a lot of images from past sessions, but they feel like they have none that they really want to post anymore or that they really want to highlight on their website anymore. Or if someone asks them to send a headshot, they're like, oh, this does like, I don't want to send this over. And it's not because the photos are bad. They're usually really, really good, but they just don't accurately reflect anymore the business that my client is building. I think another really good indicator is I'm always trying to do a photo shoot shoot that is going to embody Maddie a year from now, or even more ideally, like 5 years from now. So being able to kind of think forward and, okay, like, what do I want from my business? Like, what does this kind of future version of myself look like? And how does she pose? And what does she wear? And so if you're always kind of forward thinking like that, then it's going to be easy to look back at past images and be like, okay, that's not reflective of the brand that I want to build anymore. And that's okay. There's no shame in that. It's probably just time to figure out either, grab a friend with a camera or book your brand session or something in between.
I love that. And I think that's such a like looking forward, because even when it comes to, your marketing, your website, you always want to put out there the type of clients that you want to attract.
Yes.
So if you're like, okay, I want to break into a more high end or the higher paying clients, doing that with iPhone photos from 5 years ago isn't necessarily going to do that. So investing, well, I feel like a lot of people are like, I don't understand why I should invest in it. Like, what's the point? A photo is a photo. They see my face. That's okay. But it really does play a massive role in your brand and how you're perceived by other people. And it makes you, even just having professional photos done, I found makes you look more experienced. It makes people trust you more. It makes people more likely to invest money with you because they're like, okay, this is someone who obviously is going to put an effort. They know what they're doing. I can trust it. And this is going to turn out well for me.
Yes, absolutely. All of those things. Like, it really is crazy how much that we absorb in like an instant from looking at a photo versus the time it takes that it takes to read like a block of copy. Copy is so incredibly important too. All of these things work together. But when you're looking at a photo, it's like a split second that people are essentially taking in some sort of an impression from you. And so if your brand shoot is kind of designed to focus on that like 5-year version of yourself or that 1-year version, whatever, then you're more likely to attract that like higher caliber of client. And that doesn't necessarily have to mean that they're going to spend more, right? It could just be that maybe it's someone who like is really interested in working with someone who has a lot of authority and experience, and they're like kind of a boss, and they want that authority. They want someone with that kind of authority to work with. So it could be something like that too. It doesn't necessarily mean, oh, I want my clients to spend more, so I need new brand photography for that. Maybe, but not always.
I'd love to know your opinion on taking brand photos that are more than just, a headshot, you sitting in front of a like blank wall headshot and that's your brand photos, versus like maybe going out and doing things or being in fun places.
Yeah.
Like, we always love to go to like colorful places or find like street art, because obviously our brand is very like bright and colorful. What's your thoughts on the different kind of sides of, just headshot photography as your branding versus maybe a little more unique and fun with it?
I'm obsessed. I think if you're not going to be unique and fun with it, like, what's the point? You only live once. I think that it's so fun, the just leaps and bounds that headshot and brand photography has come in the last 10 years. I think creatives especially have really gotten creative with what brand photography can look like. Something that I'm noticing now as a trend, and obviously it depends on the type of brand and who they're wanting to attract, but like a very high vibe, editorial, very minimalistic type brand photography. And I think that can be really fun. Just by nature, I love a lot of color. I love a lot of texture. I love shooting on location for that reason. I have a studio. I love my studio. It's all white walls, very boring. And that's got a time and a place for sure. But I think texture and color and just shooting in like a more lifestyle environment can tell so much of a story. And with brand photography, you're telling a brand story. So that can be really helpful.
Do you have any advice for any photographers or creatives listening who may be nervous to lean into their personal brand?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think the first thing, like we talked about earlier, is just recognizing that like it's okay that you're nervous. Nobody goes into this not nervous. This is, not just personal branding, specifically a photo shoot, but I do brand photo shoots for myself. Like, I book another photographer probably every 6 months. Like, it's a frequent occurrence in my business. And I had one the other day and I was kind of documenting it. And I was sitting in the car before going into the studio for the photo shoot. It's my studio. I own it. I had my hair and makeup done. I was looking so good and I was feeling the furthest thing from confident. Like it's just not the type of thing that you walk into with a lot of confidence. The confidence comes after. And I think that that's true for personal branding too. You're not going to feel confident the first time that you post an Instagram story or you do a Friday introductions post or you put your photo above the fold on your website instead of your work. Like you're not going to feel confident the first time you do that. But what happens when you put yourself out there like that is people feel more invited to connect with you. And those connections are everything. They will make you feel more confident because the more messages that you get from people saying, oh my gosh, like you too, I thought that that was just me, or what you said really resonated with me, or I'm going through something similar, like that makes it so worth it. And it builds your confidence that like, oh, okay, there are other people who think the way I think and feel the way I feel. And like, I'm not alone, that connection is just everything.
And I think it's so great, like, especially as a photographer, because no one, let's be honest, no one, especially the first time, loves to be in front of the camera.
Oh no, it's the worst. It's terrible.
It is so nerve-wracking. And you just feel awkward. You're like, I've never not known what to do with my hands. And now I have no idea what to do with my hands.
I have hands? Like what?
Yeah, but I think taking that time and getting these brand photos done, one, is not only going to get you great photos, but I feel like too, it helps you connect with your clients better because you understand what they're going through as you're photographing them. You're like, I totally get how awkward and uncomfortable this might feel right now. Like, let's try these things. These are some things that like I do when I get photos done because I'm uncomfortable in front of the camera. And like, it can kind of help build that relationship and trust and kind of make everyone more comfortable.
Like, yeah, put it on my tombstone. Exactly what you just said. 100%. That I think that that is the biggest opportunity that photographers have when it comes to personal branding. Certainly brand photographers, but really all photographers. We spend all this time telling our clients that they need to invest in themselves and get in front of the camera and don't wait to lose the last 10 pounds. And your kids want to see like who you are today and all this stuff, but we're not often taking the same action that we're asking our clients to take. And so even if our clients can't pinpoint that exactly, there is a disconnect there. There is a lack of trust there. And if you can say, look, I'll go first. I will go first and I'll let you know how it goes. And I'm doing it scared. I'm not comfortable, but I'm going to do it anyway. That builds so much trust and empathy with your ideal client, which makes them want to work with you. And I think it also makes your marketing better because every time I experience a photo shoot, I'm like, oh, this is what it feels like. This is why nobody's booking right now. I get it. Okay, I'm going to talk about that.
Yeah, no. And I think there's also that like little bit of almost like practicing what you preach. And if you're like, if you are a brand photographer, if you're out there saying brand photography is important, we need to get brand photography, and you obviously haven't gotten it or haven't gotten it in years, people might look at that and be like, okay, but you're not even doing it. So why do 100%. I need to invest in you if you're not? Like, you have to almost invest in your business and put that same, time and energy into it that you're asking other people to put into you.
Absolutely. You have to show them how it works because they're scared. They're intimidated. They don't know how it's going to go. And if they've never done it before, they don't know what the payoff is. And so the more that you can really show them, this is why I invest in personal branding in whatever way you're investing in it. This is why I do it. And here's been the results. Like that's such a fantastic case study on yourself, essentially, to be able to say, here's why it's worth it. Like this is a reason why it's worth it.
Absolutely. 100%. Well, that is all the questions that we have for you today. This was amazing. And you gave so much great advice and tips, and hopefully everyone can walk away from here and understand that you already have a personal brand and you can lean into it, and it is going to help you connect with your ideal clients. But in the meantime, if people want to keep up with you, follow you online, anything like that, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I spend way too much time on Instagram. My handle is at Maddie Peschong, and I'm at Maddie Peschong on every platform. My website is maddiepeschong.com, and I am currently focused on my group coaching program, which is called Rebrand, and that's for photographers who want to make the pivot into personal brand photography. Not only has personal branding changed my life and made me feel like I really have a business that's a true extension of myself, but pivoting to personal branding has been a game changer for my family and my business. And so I love teaching photographers how they can do that. I'm actually this week in the middle of a mini course that teaches how to make your first $500 with brand photography. So I'll send you guys the link for that, but it's at maddiepeschong.com/brand photographer. And my program opens the next cohort on Friday. So I would love to chat with anyone who is interested in exploring what personal brand photography could look like in their photography business.
Amazing. Well, we will put all of those links down there, as well as a link to your podcast. If you haven't already tuned in, you should definitely tune in because there's a lot of great information and tips there as well. But thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today and for giving all of the amazing tips that you did. And we'll catch you in the next episode.
Thank you for having me.